Hi everyone. Today we're going to be focusing on person-centered therapy, and when we think of person-centered therapy we think about Carl Rogers. They go hand in hand, obviously, and if you'll remember, whenever you guys were on campus, I showed a little clip of Carl and how he approaches person-centered theory. And what really there are a couple of takeaways. I'm not going to make this a very long lecture because, like I promised last week, now we're getting into the time period where people who developed these theories and were around during a time where we were able to film them. And so you'll see that I've got YouTube videos, yay, that are posted in the class this week. One is a complete session of Carl Rogers and Gloria. If you aren't familiar with the Gloria videos, they're kind of the quintessential introduction to those early theoretical approaches where you had these theorists, 3 in total, Carl Rogers being the first, conducting a therapeutic session using their techniques and using their theoretical underpinnings with one individual client. Her name is Gloria, and so I will hopefully be able to find equal quality videos in the upcoming weeks when we talk about REBT and Albert Ellis and Gestalt with not Fritz Perls, but the other guy that I'm just blanking on my name right now because I'm not talking about him today. But anyway, so I want you to watch the entire video of Dr. Rogers with Gloria. So it's a 45-minute long video, and I really want you to take note of his mannerisms, his demeanor toward Gloria, how he's using this theoretical approach that he designed, he developed, which was really groundbreaking at the time. And if you think about where we were, if you're thinking about a psychoanalysis, Freudian theories, his school of thought, and then even moving into Alfred Adler and Adlerian theory and his school of thought. There was a bit of a departure from Freud and looking at the individual and existential therapy, really looking at the humanistic value of clients. Now we're looking at the person in and of themselves. And Carl Rogers really was that, the way that I would think about him is that he, took the white coat off. He basically said to the world, the psychotherapy community, our clients have it within themselves to enact some type of change. They have the ability, if the environment is right, if we provide them with that right environment, they can find these certain core aspects of themselves, and eventually that will lead to change. And so the relationship with the individual was key with Carl Rogers and person-centered therapy, as the name would suggest, right? Person-centered therapy. Even if you don't gravitate towards Carl Rogers and his style and looking at his video, I mean, really for me that was always the most uncomfortable thing, just to kind of see him watch and work. And even if you're looking at his daughter and work with expressive arts therapy, I got a video of her as well, and she has passed away a couple of years ago. I think it was 2015, which the text doesn't reflect. But Natalie Rogers and her expressive arts therapy, I mean, they're so close with their clients, and to me, I would have to do a lot of work on myself to feel like I could be that physically close with a client in a session. And certainly not all aspects of person-centered therapy work with all individuals. But if you think about the core foundations of person-centered therapy and how we are expressing unconditional positive regard for our client, that regardless of the theoretical orientation that you might subscribe to, you're always going to be experiencing or showing unconditional positive regard for your client. You are meeting the client where they are. You are accepting them for who they are in that moment with you, that you are accepting of a client. If you're ever getting to a point where you're not accepting a client and who they are within that room with you, then it's time to really seek some supervision and find out what the underlying reasons are that you're not. But within person-centered theory, really the therapist is viewed as not the expert of the individual. The individual is the expert of their own lives. If you think about assessment and how Rogers approached assessment, the kind of thought process was, why am I doing an assessment on somebody to find out something about them whenever they could just tell me something about them? And so it really makes sense. And if you think about working with people with certain disabilities, I mean, certainly we do use assessment assessment, and it's necessary and it's part of our process, especially to get to a point where we're diagnosing. But at the heart of it, it's like, well, yeah, how often do we actually need these formal assessments? Can't we just find out this information from the person sitting across from us? Rogers really underscored that the client is in the state of incongruence. That's what brings them to therapy in the first place. And the counselor is this individual who is in a state of congruence, kind of like we've got it all together, but only to a certain degree, because Carl Rogers acknowledged that the therapist is not always, in the best frame of mind or the best state of mind, and can't always be, completely accepting of a client. And for that, we have to go and seek our own supervision and our own counseling at times. But the relationship is really what is stressed with person-centered therapy. The relationship between the counselor and the client, to a degree. There's self-disclosure that comes from the counselor, which that might make some individuals uncomfortable. It might make some practitioners uncomfortable. But he believed that that's part of that developing relationship and developing that bond with our clients, is to share some information about our experiences. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and I encourage you to start practicing that in those role plays that you guys are doing, and maybe even practicing that in the videos that you're submitting to me, so we can all give each other feedback on maybe some right ways and wrong ways to self-disclose. Anyway, I digress here. So if you see the textbook puts some focus on emotion-focused therapy is kind of a new spin on person-centered therapy. There's also applications, parts of positive psychology that pull from Carl Rogers and this belief system. He really drew a lot from Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. I love Maslow. And if you think of, again, on campus, whenever we did that HALT activity, if you will, or whatever it is, where I asked you to think of ways that you can manage being hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. That's Maslow right there, basically indicating that if our basic needs for safety are not met, our basic need to be worthy, so to be accepted, if none of that is met, then we're never going to get to the point where we can be considered self-actualized, and that's kind of the highest point in Maslow's hierarchy, or the triangle. But you can see a lot of person-centered theory and the foundations of person-centered theory and motivational interviewing, and there's a whole section in this text that we're going to be really focusing on MI in a couple of weeks from now, because I felt like it was useful to talk about it a little bit deeper than we even did last semester, spring semester, I guess, if you will. Person-centered therapy works really nicely for individuals who are experiencing some type of crisis. If you are thinking about individuals that have gone through trauma, or then they're in that crisis state, most people just want to have somebody to listen to them, and so person-centered theory really allows for that space, allows for that safe space. And so when we're thinking about crisis intervention, there are a lot of parallels to intervening with somebody and using person-centered theory. And really, even if the textbook didn't talk about it in this chapter, there's not a theory out there where we're not just sitting back and listening to our clients sometimes. Person-centered theory is very non-directive. Some people have difficulty understanding how it works because there's not like a set of techniques that's being used, other than just continuously reflecting feelings, reflecting emotions, summarizing, paraphrasing, those basic core counseling skills, those micro skills that we talked about for an entire semester. All of that really does come from person-centered theory, but person-centered theory kind of takes it to that next level, and eventually you're kind of reflecting things back in a way that does help the client move to where they want to go. Clients might need more structure. Some clients want more structure. They want somebody to be a little bit more directive with them. They might have might come from a different type of cultural background, a different more collectivist society. And so if you're asking a client to really reflect on who they are, their ideal self, who they think they should be, that can be very difficult for them to just focus on them as an individual rather than thinking of themselves as a member of a unit, a collective unit. So there are some cultural considerations that Carl Rogers maybe didn't think about because it was the times we were thinking about when all of this started. It was like in the mid-1950s, 1960s, 70s, that era of time. Natalie, however, really did a nice job at kind of bringing all of the foundations of personal-centered theory into the modern world, adding her own spin on the actual process of working with a client. And I hope you find the video interesting and her expressive arts therapy. I did. I'm not an art type person that would, if I were the client on the other side and you asked me to draw a picture, it just would throw me off completely. I would probably prefer a more directive client than somebody that's practicing from a person-centered perspective. But there's space for it in every therapeutic relationship, I think. So with that, I will leave you to watch the videos. The quality is not great. Think about the time that this video was filmed with Gloria, and that'll apply for the next couple of weeks too when I find more videos of Gloria in all of her glory. It's always interesting and fun for me to watch because she sits there and, you know, the cutest little dress that I absolutely love, and she smokes cigarettes and she gets pissed, and it's just funny to interesting really and insightful to watch her work with each of the psychotherapists that she works with. So with that, I'll leave you to the video and to the discussion board for this week. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.